Get this woman out of my bank before real customers see her. The voice sliced through the morning air like a cold blade, shattering the stillness of downtown Chicago. In an instant, Dylan Hart's hand swung, and the sharp crack of a slap echoed across the marble lobby of Crescent First Bank, Loop 12 branch. The folder in Ava Mitchell's hand flew to the floor papers, scattering like startled birds. She didn't speak, not a single word. Only her gaze remained steady and deep, as calm as water before a storm. The bank was packed at peak hour. Conversations, halted footsteps froze mid-air. Someone gasped. A young woman covered her mouth. An elderly man looked up from his newspaper. Everything froze for a heartbeat, as the dignity of one human being was torn apart in public. Ava touched her cheek where the sting of Dylan's hand still burned. But in her eyes there were no tears, only something smoldering, quietly, an ember of restraint. Dylan Hart, 46, dressed in a charcoal suit and a dark red tie, his face creased with arrogance, bent down, picked up the crumpled loan application, and tossed it back toward her like trash. "You think this bank is a charity?" he sneered. "Take this junk outside. We serve people who actually qualify." His voice carried loud and clear deliberately for everyone to hear. In the corner of the lobby, Maya Lopez, a 20-year-old communications student, had already started recording on her phone. The screen read, "Live 24 viewers." No one dared to intervene. Only the slow, deliberate click of Ava's heels echoed as she bent down to gather the papers. The sheets fluttered with the air conditioning, brushing softly against table legs and marble columns. She picked each one up carefully, slowly, as if she were collecting the fragments of her own pride. A middle-aged man whispered to his friend, "She must be broke." The other replied, "Or maybe she's scamming." The murmurs spread like a contagious disease. Dylan stepped back, arms crossed, his voice sharp. "Did you not hear me? Security call, security. Get her out before real clients see this mess." At the teller counter, the LED light cast a harsh glow on his cold face. Behind him, the digital clock displayed 10:47 in the morning. Below it scrolled a line of text board meeting in 73 minutes. Ava glanced up briefly, then down at her wristwatch, a vintage Cartier with a gold rim, its face scratched slightly with age. No one noticed. No one recognized it. She spoke softly, voice calm. "Are you sure you want to handle this in front of customers and the security cameras?" Dylan laughed, a hoarse, bitter sound. "You think I'm afraid? Who are you? Some jobless nobody dressed like she just walked out of a shelter asking for a loan. We don't hand out charity funds here." The click of phone keys sounded. Maya had just added a caption to her live stream. "Manager slapped a woman at Crescent Bank, Chicago Loop 12. The viewer count climbed 157, 398, 147. Across the lobby, Grace Lynn, a 72-year-old long-time customer with neatly tied silver hair, stood clutching her passbook. She exhaled sharply, her eyes tightening at the scene. "This isn't right, dear," she murmured. Dylan spun around. "Mrs. Lynn, please don't interfere. This is an internal matter." The air thickened. The silence after the slap had become a collective discomfort. Someone coughed. Someone else looked away, but no one stepped forward. Ava closed the folder, straightened her back, and said, in a quiet but clear tone, "I'd like to speak to the regional director." Dylan squinted, smiling with disdain. "Oh, you think you can meet the regional director? Dream on. People like you don't get those meetings." The words made Maya grip her phone tighter. "This is blatant discrimination," she whispered into the lens. The live stream now showed 1,200 viewers. Dylan's anger mixed with the fear of losing face. He stepped closer to Ava, the scent of coffee and overpowering cologne surrounding him. "Leech, don't pretend to be dignified. That phone of yours is probably stolen." He pointed to the tan leather case, engraved with the initials AM, and the viewers on the live stream gasped as they heard it clearly. Comments flooded the screen. "It's 2024, and this still happens. Sue him, call the police." Ava stayed silent. She picked up the final paper, a first-class ticket from O'Hare to London departure date today. The gold shimmer on the ticket caught the light. Carlos Reyes, the head of security, stepped out. He caught sight of the ticket. His expression froze for a moment. But Dylan shouted, "Carlos, code yellow. We've got a disturbance, need support." Carlos hesitated. In 12 years as a guard, he knew code yellow was reserved for real threats, violence weapons. But here, the woman was only picking up papers. Ava looked at him, her eyes soft yet piercing. "I understand I'm being asked to leave," she said, quietly. "But I don't understand why." The words landed softly, yet they struck like a blow. Carlos said nothing. Maya held her breath behind the camera. Mrs. Grace placed a trembling hand over her heart, her vision blurring. Dylan turned sharply and yelled, "Because we don't serve people like you." The silence that followed was chilling. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to stop. Sunlight spilled through the glass doors, illuminating the red mark on Ava's cheek. She rose folder in hand, her voice calm and cold as steel. "Thank you for making your position clear. Mr. Hart, I suggest you call corporate right now." Dylan burst into laughter, loud and hollow. "Call corporate, who do you think will pick up for you? The janitor." That was the final straw. Maya tilted her phone, the flood of viewers, surging comments, flashing faster than anyone could read. "She's too calm. Something's off. Feels like he just dug his own grave." The revolving doors at the front opened slightly, a gust of cold air sweeping in. A soft chime echoed. The clock flicked to 10:50. 70 minutes left until the board meeting. And somewhere inside this glass tower, someone was about to witness the earthquake Dylan Hart had just triggered with his own hand. Ava picked up her pen, slipped it into her coat pocket. Her eyes no longer wet, only shining with unshakable resolve. Outside the live stream had just crossed 2,000 viewers, but no one knew they were about to witness one of the most dramatic reversals in the history of American banking. The bank lobby seemed to hold its breath. Every eye turned toward the woman who had just risen after that humiliating slap. White light reflected from the glass ceiling and illuminated Ava Mitchell's face, making the red mark on her cheek glow like a wound in a cold portrait of power and prejudice. Behind her, Maya Lopez's phone kept trembling in her hand as the view count crossed 3,000. Every comment appeared like gasoline poured onto a fire. "This is blatant racism. Someone send this to CNN. That manager's done for." But Dylan Hart still didn't realize it. He still believed he was in control, still convinced he was the giant in a small theater. "What are you waiting for? Carlos!" He barked, his voice booming over the noise. "I said call for backup. She's disrupting the bank." Carlos Reyes, a man who had faced armed robbers before, now stood frozen before a woman holding a folder. He looked at Ava, then at Dylan, then at the sea of eyes watching him. In that moment, he understood the real disturbance wasn't coming from her. It was standing right in front of him. "Mr. Hart," he said slowly, "code yellow only applies when there's a threat of violence. I don't see anyone attacking anyone here." Dylan glared at him, his face turning red from being challenged in front of everyone. Are you working security here, or acting as her lawyer?" Ava looked at Carlos and gave a small nod of gratitude. She bent down and picked up the last sheet of paper, a document bearing the Crescent First Bank logo. At the top corner, the words were printed clearly. "Confidential, 11 o'clock." Dylan glanced at it, but didn't care. He was too caught up in his own fury. "She's wasting our time," he shouted. "Get her out now." Erin Hale, the assistant manager, stepped out from the back office. She had heard the shouting from afar, and now found herself staring at a scene straight out of a movie, customers recording a woman being humiliated, and a branch manager completely out of control. "What's going on here?" Erin asked, her voice steady, though her eyes darted quickly across the crowd. "Nothing that concerns you," Dylan snapped. "I'm handling a disturbance." Maya's camera zoomed in on Erin's face just as her eyes widened, catching sight of the red mark on Ava's cheek. "Did you hit her?" Erin asked, her voice low but sharp as a blade. The entire lobby fell silent. Customers began whispering. "I saw it," one said. "He really slapped her." Another added, "I got the whole thing on video." Ava remained silent, her eyes following every word, every movement, as if waiting for the truth to reveal itself on its own. Dylan scoffed, trying to save face. "She insulted my staff. I just brushed her off to defend myself." Erin tightened her grip on the folder in her hands. She knew she was witnessing something that could destroy the entire branch. "Mr. Hart," she said slowly, "if you keep raising your voice, I'll have to call corporate." "Go ahead," Dylan sneered. "Let's see who they believe me, the branch manager of the year 3 years in a row, or a homeless woman with no credit score." That sentence was the second spark. On the live stream, viewers shot past 5,200. Angry emojis flooded the chat. "What a vile man. I'm screen recording this. Don't delete the clip. This is exactly why people lose faith in the system." Near the entrance, Grace Lynn took a trembling step forward, her voice shaking. "I've kept my savings here for 40 years, but today I'm ashamed of what I'm seeing." Her voice was weak, but it cut through the thick air, forcing everyone's eyes toward her. Dylan forced a smile. "Mrs. Lynn, please don't let emotions cloud your judgment. You don't understand the full story." The elderly woman looked straight at him. "I understand enough, Mr. Hart. I understand what happens when a man in power has no compassion." The air seemed to drain out of the room. Ava looked at the elderly woman, nodded gently, her lips trembling with emotion. For the first time that morning, she didn't feel alone. Outside the glass doors, freelance reporters began to arrive. Cars with local news logos pulled up to the curb. The story was spreading faster than any internal memo ever could. Inside, Erin tugged lightly on Dylan's sleeve. "You need to stop! This is going online!" Good Dylan roared. "Let them see how I handle trash clients." This time, the whole lobby gasped. Maya gripped her phone tightly and whispered, "Oh God, he just ended his career." Ava still stood there, holding her folder. Her eyes softened. Her voice was calm, but unmistakably firm. "Mr. Hart, if I were you, I'd call the corporate office right now." "Are you threatening me?" Dylan laughed, his voice rough and bitter. "Who do you think you are?" She didn't answer. She simply looked at the wall clock, 10:56 in the morning. Just over 60 minutes until the board meeting. That would decide his fate. Ava's phone vibrated in her coat pocket. She glanced at the screen. Robert Pierce, board chairman. She declined the call. No one noticed her hand tremble slightly. Dylan caught the movement and scoffed. "Oh, must be the pawn shop calling to collect." Erin exhaled sharply, a chill running down her spine. Carlos stepped closer to Ava, speaking quietly. Ma'am, I can escort you out safely. Ava shook her head gently. No need, Mr. Reyes. I'm just waiting for the right moment. Maya leaned toward Mrs. Grace and whispered, Do you see it? She's not afraid at all. The elderly woman's eyes gleamed. The innocent never need to be afraid, she replied. A second later, Ava's phone rang again. This time she looked straight at the screen, then at Dylan. Determination flashed in her eyes. Excuse me, I need to take this. She pressed the button, her voice low but clear enough to echo through the silent lobby. Yes, I'm still at Loop 12 branch. Yes, there's been a small incident. No, don't send anyone yet. I need 5 more minutes. Then she hung up and slipped the phone back into her pocket. Maya, Erin, Carlos, and every customer stared at her, waiting for a miracle. Dylan smirked. 5 minutes for what? To call your free lawyer? Ava replied calmly. No. To let you realize what you've just lost. At that moment, a car horn blared outside. Dark-suited figures stepped out of a black SUV parked by the glass doors. Maya swung her camera toward the entrance. The viewer count hit 8,300 and kept climbing. Ava glanced at the clock again, 10:58. She whispered almost to herself, It's time. Outside, the automatic doors slid open. The people walking in were not customers. They wore badges bearing the insignia of Crescent First Bank Corporate Security Division. Dylan froze. For a split second, something flickered in his eyes. Fear. And that was only the beginning. Footsteps thundered across the marble floor as 3 people in black suits badges gleaming on their left chests entered. No one spoke, yet the air in the lobby shifted instantly, as if real power had just crossed the threshold. Dylan Hart blinked rapidly, trying to recover his command. Oh, great corporate security is here, he said with a dry laugh. Get her out before I call the police. But none of the security team looked at him. The lead director, Jennifer Blake, 44 years old, eyes cold as steel, walked straight to Ava Mitchell. Good morning, Miss Mitchell, she said, her voice low and respectful. Dylan blinked again. The way Jennifer spoke, quiet yet deferential, sent a chill down his spine. Wait, he cut in, scrambling for authority. You have the wrong person. She's the one causing a disturbance. I demand. Jennifer raised a hand, stopping him with a small, decisive gesture. Mr. Hart, I did not come here to take orders. I came here to enforce them. The whispers died at once. Maya, still gripping her phone, breathed into the live stream. You guys, she knows that woman. Something is happening. Ava turned to Jennifer, calm and composed. Thank you for arriving on time. I trust everything is being recorded. Yes, ma'am. Jennifer nodded, tapping the device at her lapel. The body cam is rolling, and this entire area is under official recording. Assistant Manager Erin Hale stood frozen, her scalp prickling. Ms. Mitchell, body cam official, recording. Dylan began to struggle for breath. Who are you? He asked, his voice warping. Ava opened her leather bag and drew out a black ID card edged in gold, lifting it to catch the light. The Crescent First Bank logo flashed on the glass ceiling. The lettering was embossed, clear and undeniable. Ava Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer, Crescent First Bank Corporation. A shockwave rippled through the lobby. No one found words fast enough. The only sound was a pen clattering from Dylan's hand. On the live stream, Maya shouted into her mic, She's the CEO of the entire corporation. Oh my God, I cannot believe this. Comments exploded. Best plot twist of the year. The woman who got slapped is the CEO, he's finished. Ava stood steady as a breeze from the automatic doors lifted a strand of her hair. Her voice was low, each word precise. Mr. Hart, I suggest you sit down. The media storm is about to begin. Dylan went pale. He stammered, No way you are joking, right? Ava unlatched her leather portfolio, the same folder he had kicked aside minutes earlier. This time, she pulled out a document stamped with the corporation's gold seal. This is the Emergency Workplace Investigation Protocol signed this morning at 9:15. Do you know which branch is under investigation? Erin swallowed hard. Dylan stared at the page, mute. The Loop 12 branch, Ava said evenly, the one you are standing in. Jennifer continued, her tone cool and steady. The corporation has received more than 7 discrimination complaints in the past 18 months. Today was a covert audit. It appears, Mr. Hart, that you have provided evidence far stronger than anticipated. Phone keyboards rattled like rain. Maya could no longer keep up with comments, as the viewer count surged past 12,000. Grace Lynn pressed a hand to her chest, her mouth opening and closing. Good heavens, so she... Ava turned to her with a soft smile. Thank you, Mrs. Lynn. You are the reason I still believe justice exists. Then she faced Dylan again. Do you know what saddens me most? Her voice warmed, then turned razor sharp. It is not that you slapped me. It is that you slapped the principle this bank was built on, dignity for every customer. Dylan stumbled back until he hit the teller counter. He stuttered. I did not know who you were. You were dressed like an ordinary person, Ava cut in. Exactly. I wanted to see how my staff behaves when they think no one is watching. The lobby grew heavy. A few employees bowed their heads. Erin stared down, lips trembling. Maya whispered, She is a true angel of reckoning. Ava looked around. Erin Hale, she called, making the assistant manager flinch. Present, ma'am. I reviewed the security footage. You tried to restrain Mr. Hart. Your actions will be recognized. Erin nearly cried. Thank you, ma'am. I just did the right thing. Ava nodded, then turned to Carlos. Mr. Reyes. Present, ma'am. Thank you for refusing to trigger Code Yellow. You understand what a real threat looks like? Carlos squared his shoulders. I only did what was right, ma'am. Yes, Ava said, and that is precisely why I believe we still have a chance to make this right. Dylan clutched the counter's edge. His face flushed red, then drained white. Miss Mitchell, he said, voice shaking too. I'm sorry. I did not know. Ava held his gaze for a very long moment. No, you knew what you were doing. You knew what you were saying. You simply did not know who was listening. The words silenced the room completely. Jennifer lifted a tablet and read from the preliminary findings. The Loop 12 branch's satisfaction rating among minority customers is 31% lower than the system average. Internal claims, $4.7 million in settlement costs. All under your management, Mr. Hart. A soft chorus of ohs stirred across the lobby. Dylan stood exposed in the bright light of daytime. Ava continued. And now another video, documenting assault, customer abuse, and racial discrimination, is spreading across the internet. Care to guess how much that will cost our stock price? Mr. Hart, his mouth worked, but no sound came. Can make this right? Ava checked the time. No. There is no time left. The board meets in 45 minutes, and your video will play first. Maya lowered her voice on the live stream, but every viewer heard each word. She is not taking revenge. She is teaching the world a lesson. Ava closed the folder and stepped toward Dylan. For 12 years you have represented this bank. Today you will represent what we must never become. Jennifer nodded to 2 security officers. Mr. Hart, surrender your employee badge and system access. His hands shook as he unclipped the nameplate from his vest. The tiny click that followed was quiet, yet final as a verdict. Maya murmured into her mic. The moment the badge hit the floor, that was the moment justice walked into this bank. Ava paused, then spoke, her voice soft and tempered like a blade. Today's crisis will be remembered not for a slap, but for how we responded after. I do not want fear. I want change. She turned to the crowd. To everyone watching here and out there, she said, meeting Maya's lens, do not stay silent when you see what is wrong. Justice lives only when someone dares to stand up. Grace Lynn wiped away a tear. Carlos stood tall, proud. Erin drew a deep breath, as if a great weight had finally lifted. And Dylan, he bowed his head, staring at the tile where the badge had fallen. Meanwhile, Maya's live stream climbed past 15,000 viewers, a storm raging across the entire banking industry. Ava checked the time one last time, 11:04 in the morning. Her voice was quiet, yet it filled the lobby. Now we begin to change. The air inside Crescent First Bank was no longer chaotic. It was the silence before a storm, a silence so heavy you could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Dylan Hart sat collapsed on a leather chair near the teller counter, his hands trembling, his face drained of color. 12 years of authority were unraveling in a matter of minutes. In front of him, Ava Mitchell stood, tall sunlight streaming through the glass ceiling, casting her shadow long across the floor. It was not the shadow of a victim, but of someone who had reclaimed absolute control. Are the recordings still running? Ava asked. Director Jennifer Blake nodded. Yes, ma'am. The entire process is being archived to the central server. Good, Ava replied, turning back to Dylan. Mr. Hart will handle this by protocol, openly, transparently, and lawfully. Dylan's eyes were bloodshot. He stammered, Ms. Mitchell too truly didn't know you were the CAO. Ava interrupted him, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. And if I weren't the CEO, would your words and actions have been any different? The question cut straight to the core. Dylan couldn't answer. His head lowered, sweat trickling down his temple. The customers around them were no longer mere spectators. They were witnesses to a defining moment where power was weighed against morality. In one corner, Maya Lopez kept live streaming, her voice trembling yet resolute. Everyone, I don't even know what I'm watching anymore. This isn't just about a slap. This is an awakening. Standing nearby, Grace Lynn spoke softly. Justice may come late, but today it came for real. Ava smiled gently at her. And it's people like you, those who dare to speak up, that remind me why I still believe in humanity. Jennifer opened her tablet, her voice steady, as if reading a verdict. Mr. Hart, under internal policy, any Crescent First Bank employee found engaging in racial discrimination, customer harassment, or physical aggression is subject to termination code 7, a gross misconduct. She paused and looked at him. This means your employment is terminated immediately, with no severance or post-employment benefits. And under Title 12 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 337.6, assaulting a customer must be reported to federal regulators. A ripple spread across the lobby. Maya held her breath, capturing every word. Into her mic, she whispered, You hear that he's not just losing his job. He's losing his entire career. Dylan pushed himself up, desperate to salvage some dignity. Wait, this is a setup. You people trapped me. She pretended to be poor, just to test me. Ava took one step forward, her voice dropping like a stone into still water. No one forced you to do anything. I simply stood here, and you revealed exactly who you are. Jennifer tilted her head slightly. Do you admit to slapping Ms. Mitchell and calling her trash, leech, and unworthy? Dylan looked around, searching for an ally, but every gaze turned away. Erin stared at the floor. Carlos clenched his fists, and Grace Lynn met his eyes with quiet disapproval. Finally he whispered, "Yes." One word short and small, yet it rang through the lobby like a gavel striking the bench. Jennifer noted the statement. Admission recorded. Termination procedure effective immediately. Ava's voice softened almost a whisper. "Mr. Hart, do you know the price of prejudice?" He stayed silent. Ava pulled out her phone and opened the market tracker. "When you slapped me, Crescent First Bank's stock was at $127.43. Now she turned the screen toward him. It's $124.67. Every minute since that slap, this bank has lost roughly $37,000 in shareholder trust, all because of one act of arrogance." Erin exhaled sharply while Carlos looked up at the digital display. In that moment, they both understood ethics and profit had never truly been separate. Jennifer continued reading. "All company assets, access cards, and system credentials will be deactivated within 15 minutes. Payroll is being processed through yesterday's date. There will be no further compensation." Dylan slumped forward, gripping the edge of the table, his body trembling like a frayed wire about to snap. Ava's tone softened, but carried the weight of truth. "I take no pleasure in seeing someone lose their job. But sometimes loss is the only lesson that truly matters." Grace Lynn placed a gentle hand on Ava's shoulder. "You don't need to apologize for justice." Ava smiled faintly. "It's not an apology, Mom. It's a beginning." She turned to the staff and customers. "Today you all witnessed the truth. And truth can be painful, but it is the first step toward change." Maya's live stream had surpassed 25,000 viewers. The comments poured in like a flood. "This is a modern justice. I'm crying. This woman is incredible. Tell me who she is so I can invest in her company." Ava looked straight into the camera. Her voice carried no anger, now only conviction. "Change doesn't come from silence. It comes from action, from those who record, who speak up, who confront injustice face to face." Maya moved closer, her hands trembling with emotion. "You're listening to a CEO talk about justice right here in a bank during business hours. This isn't just a video. This is a living lesson." Jennifer closed her tablet and nodded. "Ms. Mitchell, the procedure is complete. Thank you, Jennifer. But it's not over." Ava replied, her gaze shifting back to Dylan. "I don't want this to end as punishment. I want it to become the turning point of an entire system." Erin looked up. "You mean—" Ava stepped to the center of the lobby, her voice rising like a speech. "From today, Loop 12 branch will launch the Dignity Banking Initiative. From here forward, no one will be judged by clothing, by accent, or by status. Every customer deserves respect." Grace Lynn began clapping first. A middle-aged man joined in, then another. Soon the applause spread, growing louder and steadier, like rain washing the air clean. Dylan remained seated, his eyes hollow, but for a fleeting second, something passed through them regret. Something he should have felt long ago. Jennifer signaled the two security officers. "Mr. Hart, please proceed to your office to collect your personal belongings." Dylan rose, shoulders sagging, walking between the two dark-suited figures. No words, no power, only the sound of the automatic doors closing behind him, echoing like the sigh of an era ending. Ava spoke softly, her eyes following him. "Sometimes justice doesn't need hammers or noise. It only needs light." She turned to Maya. "Keep recording. Let the world see that justice isn't revenge, it's responsibility." And in the sunlight flooding the bank's grand hall, The image of a woman once marked by a handprint on her cheek had become a symbol of new faith. A slap once meant to humiliate her. But that same slap had awakened an entire system. The atmosphere in the Crescent First Bank lobby had settled, but the silence was no longer heavy. It was the stillness of one era, closing and another opening. Ava Mitchell stood at the center of the marble hall, hands lightly clasped at her waist, white light from the glass roof washing over her face. In that light, she was no longer the woman who was slapped, but a symbol of power redefined. Behind her, security escorted Dylan Hart past the teller rows. He did not look back. His footsteps struck the floor in steady, icy beats, like a countdown ending an age. The automatic doors slid shut. A dry click rang out, but in everyone's mind, it sounded like the door to change swinging open. Jennifer Blake, the security director, stepped forward. Ms. Mitchell, personnel action is complete. Headquarters requests your confirmation that the process is concluded. Ava shook her head. It is not concluded, Jennifer. This is only the beginning. Maya Lopez's phone, still recording, whispered into her live stream mic. Everyone, she is not stopping at a firing. It feels like she is about to change the entire system. The live stream had surpassed 30,000 live viewers. Yet Ava seemed to forget the camera. Every gesture was natural, instinctive, and full of weight. Erin Hale, she called. Erin stepped forward, still shaken by what had just happened. Present, ma'am. Ava met her eyes, gentle but resolute. I saw what you did. You chose courage over silence. Starting today, you will lead the customer service culture transformation across all Chicago branches. Erin's eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe what she had heard. Me, yes. Ava smiled. I need people who know respect does not live in a checklist, it lives in the heart. Applause broke out from the staff by the teller counters. Some bowed their heads, their eyes a mixture of shame and admiration. Ava turned, stepped up a few stairs, and her voice carried through the space. Today we did not only lose a manager, we gained an opportunity to redefine what this bank truly stands for. She paused, drew a long breath, and continued. From this moment, Crescent First Bank will launch the Dignity Banking Initiative, and the Loop 12 branch will lead the way. Maya tilted the camera, catching the light reflected across Ava's face. She whispered, "This is how a real leader is born." Jennifer Blake moved closer, her tone professional. With your permission, Ms. Mitchell, could you summarize the initiative's scope for all staff? Ava nodded. Of course. She set her laptop on the counter and connected it to the lobby's large digital screen. The display read, Dignity Banking Initiative. Phase 1. Phase 1. Ava said rolls out within 30 days. We standardize the entire customer service flow. No more dividing people into VIP and ordinary. Everyone who enters this bank receives the same smile, the same level of respect. Customers glanced at one another, a few of them smiling. Ava went on, eyes bright beneath the lights. In parallel, we will integrate an AI system to monitor customer interactions, a bias detection system. It will analyze tone, attitude, and staff responses in real time. When bias or unfairness appears, the system will issue an alert and immediate guidance for correction. A ripple of whispers rose. A junior employee murmured, "It's like a camera for emotions." Ava heard and nodded slightly. Exactly. Because emotion sometimes needs illumination before we realize we are drifting off course. She tapped to the next slide. Phase 2, from 60 to 90 days. We will form the Dignity Banking Community Council, including local residents, civil rights organizations, and customers who have experienced discrimination. They will evaluate challenge and publish quarterly reports. All metrics will be fully public. A young staffer raised a hand. Ms. Mitchell, does that mean anyone can see our branch's service performance? Ava nodded. Yes. Because justice cannot live behind closed doors. The live stream comments flared. This is real transparency. Other banks should copy this. I'm moving my accounts to Crescent. Ava continued. Phase 3. Within the next 6 months, we will invest a $2 million fund for minority businesses, women-led startups, and immigrant communities. At the same time, we will require that at least 40% of management roles be held by leaders from culturally diverse backgrounds. She lifted her gaze, her voice slowing and deepening. Because diversity is not a slogan. It is the mirror that reflects a company's true dignity. Erin lowered her pen, eyes wet. Carlos stood taller, nodding his assent. Even Jennifer, usually unreadable, pressed her lips and gave a small nod. The screen shifted to the final slide, Phase 4, Industry Leadership. Within 1 year, Ava said, Crescent First Bank will host the National Anti-Bias in Customer Service Summit, and we will open source our bias detection software for every bank and every business. Justice is not proprietary. It must be shared. The lobby fell utterly silent. Then applause broke out, one person, then another, until the whole space swelled with the sound of agreement. Filming Maya choked up. I'm watching history happen. A CEO turning crisis into reform. A slap turning into a revolution. Ava smiled, faintly deep emotion glinting in her eyes. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but this moment, right where she had been humiliated, had become the launch pad for the rebirth of trust. She turned to Jennifer. I want every document, video, and report from today delivered to the board of directors, the media, and human resources before the meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Understood, Mum. Ava paused for a few seconds. She looked around at each employee, each customer, each face. This is no longer about me or about Mr. Hart. This is about us. The people who are redefining what the word bank means. Grace Lynn smiled, kindly eyes shining. My dear, today, you didn't just make this bank better. You made the whole world believe a little more in justice. Ava placed a hand on her shoulder and spoke softly. No one can change the world alone. But anyone can begin in a place like this. Outside the glass, the midday sun flashed across the silver letters of the sign, Crescent First Bank Loop 12. A place that had once symbolized arrogance was becoming a symbol of renewal and dignity. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The meeting room on the 42nd floor of Crescent First Bank's headquarters glowed in the sun. Glass walls framed the Chicago skyline, every tower seeming to bow before the media storm raging below. On the digital board, Crescent First Bank COO confronts branch manager during business hours. The video reaches 4 million views in 3 hours. #Dignity Banking trending in 12 countries. At the head of the long table sat Robert Pierce, 58 chairman of the board. His face was stern, his eyes thoughtful. On the screen before him, the footage of Ava Mitchell being slapped, and the moment that changed everything played again. No one spoke. The only sound was the playback. Mr. Hart, I suggest you call corporate right now. Then the sharp crack of the slap froze the 40-square-meter room. Robert exhaled, setting the remote down. I've watched this clip 7 times, he said slowly, and every time it feels like swallowing ice. A woman's voice broke the silence. Shares are down 2.3% by noon, almost $900 million in value. Investors want an official statement. Another added, public sentiment favors Ms. Mitchell. They're calling her the CEO of a new generation. Brand trust is soaring across platforms. Robert listened, eyes fixed on the door as it opened. Ava Mitchell entered. No one applauded, yet the air changed. She didn't need an introduction. Her presence alone demanded silence. She wore a charcoal suit, white shirt, no jewelry, no lipstick, only a small silver pin on her lapel. Dignity banking. "Thank you for coming early," she said, setting her laptop on the table. Her tone was calm, but carried weight. None of us wanted to make the news this way. But crisis is not the enemy. It's the mirror that shows a company's true face. Robert nodded. "Ms. Mitchell, we all saw what happened. What I want to know is, what do you intend to do next?" Ava pressed a key. On screen, bold letters read, "The cost of prejudice." "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "we've lost nearly $900 million in hours, not to financial errors, but to a slap. That slap didn't just humiliate a person. It exposed our culture where arrogance passes for professionalism and bias hides behind policy." The CFO spoke. "But Ava, the market forgets. Tomorrow's headlines will be different. We can ride this out." Ava's gaze cut through him. "No, Daniel. We can't wait for trust. It must be earned back." She clicked to an image of the Loop 12 lobby, Mrs. Grace Lynn holding her hand on the live stream. "This is the face of our customers. An immigrant woman who trusted us 40 years and watched that trust collapse in 40 seconds. If we don't act, she'll never return, and neither will millions like her." Linda Cho, head of marketing, spoke softly. "With respect, Ms. Mitchell, no CEO has ever done what you did. It was beyond protocol." Ava smiled faintly. "Linda, sometimes protocol can't save dignity. And dignity is the only thing that keeps a brand alive." The mood shifted. Doubt turned to belief. Robert leaned back, reflective. "Ms. Mitchell, I've seen CEOs in crises, some hide, some blame others. You made the industry look inward. How far do you plan to take this?" Ava changed the slide. "Dignity banking initiative, corporate expansion. We're not fixing one branch," she said. "We're reforming the system. Every branch will hold quarterly bias awareness training. Every manager will complete a dignity leadership course before promotion. Customer feedback data will be fully visible inside the company, no secrets." A voice asked, "The cost?" "What's the budget? Less than the cost of a crisis," Ava replied. "One slap cost almost $1 billion. Preventing bias costs 1,000th of that." Silence followed. Her words carved themselves into the oak table. Robert smiled, slightly pride in his eyes. "Ms. Mitchell, when you became CEO, people doubted you. Now no one dares. I'll propose the board adopt your initiative company wide." Ava bowed her head. "Thank you, Robert. But this isn't my victory. It's a victory for what's right." Outside, the afternoon sun gilded the towers, gold light spilling across faces once known for power. Now students relearning humanity. Robert spoke again. "We'll hold a press conference in 2 hours. Ava, what will you tell the public?" Her voice was firm. "Not an apology, a promise." Robert nodded. "Good. It's been a long time since I saw a CEO remind me this company still has a soul." As the directors filed out with the new plan, Robert stayed behind, placing a hand on Ava's shoulder. "You know, Ava, not everyone has the courage to step down from the 42nd floor to face reality." She smiled softly. "Sometimes, to see the system clearly, you must stand in the lobby where people pay the price for its mistakes." Robert nodded admiration in his eyes. "The world needs more leaders like you." Ava turned to the window, watching sunlight glint across the glass. reflecting tiny figures moving below. "No, Robert," she said gently. "The world just needs more people willing to see each other as human." Down below, the city roared on, but high above the storm had passed, leaving only the light of awakening. That afternoon, as the sun began to retreat from the glass windows of the skyscrapers, the headquarters of Crescent First Bank glowed once again, this time under hundreds of camera lenses. Outside the lobby, the bank's logo shimmered in the golden light of sunset, like a mirror polished clean after a storm. Crowds gathered in the Loop Plaza. Major news networks had parked their broadcast vans, and massive LED screens displayed a single headline: "Live CEO Ava Mitchell breaks silence." The air was tense. The entire nation was waiting to hear what the woman who had been slapped in a video that swept across the world would say. Inside the press room, Ava Mitchell walked out. She brought no security, no spokesperson, only a microphone, a glass of water, and a sign behind her with 4 words: "Dignity as profit." The flashes erupted as dozens of reporters stood. Ava raised a hand, gently signaling for quiet. Her voice carried low, steady, filled with emotion. Over the past 3 days, this country has witnessed what happened at our Loop 12 branch. But I am not here to talk about that slap. I am here to talk about what it woke us up to. She paused for a moment. The room held its breath. The woman in that video is not just me. She represents anyone who has ever been judged unfairly, underestimated, or told they weren't worthy of respect. A reporter raised a hand. "Ms. Mitchell, do you believe that video has damaged the bank's image?" Ava smiled softly, her eyes unwavering. "No, I believe it saved it. It's easy to flaunt success in advertisements, but only when a company faces its own mistakes does its true character reveal itself." She looked straight into the main camera lens, as if speaking directly to the millions watching at home. Crescent First Bank used to pride itself on performance. Today we will take pride in integrity. Below, reporters scribbled furiously. Among them sat Maya Lopez, the student who had once live-streamed that moment, now wearing a fresh press badge around her neck. Her hands trembled as she looked at the woman who had been slapped in a lobby, now commanding the attention of an entire industry. Ava continued, "I have seen the public outrage and I understand it. But I have also seen something else, thousands of messages from bankers across the country saying they want to change. They want to learn to make things right, to feel proud of wearing this uniform again. So today, I will not apologize with words. I will apologize with action." She opened her document, her voice growing stronger, rhythmic, like the beating of a drum. "I am announcing the nationwide dignity banking policy. All 430 branches will be required to complete anti-bias training. Every report of discrimination will be addressed within 48 hours, no exceptions. And starting today, Crescent First Bank is establishing the Community Equity Fund, $25 million dedicated to customers affected by inequities in the financial system." The first applause came from the back row. Then another. Then the room erupted. A few reporters even set down their pens, just to clap something rare in a financial press conference. Ava took a deep breath, her tone softening. We cannot erase the past, but we can rewrite how the future remembers it. Her gaze lifted toward the cameras, her eyes glowing beneath the flashes. If you have ever been looked down on, remember this dignity never needs to be proven. It only needs to be upheld. If you have ever been silenced, speak. Because silence is complicity. And if you have ever doubted whether justice is real today, I stand here to tell you it is." The room erupted. Applause thundered like waves against the walls. Some stood eyes glistening. Ava bowed her head, then turned and walked off the stage. Maya watched her go, tears streaming down her cheeks. She whispered into her mic as her live stream surpassed 10 million live viewers. She's not just a CEO. She's living proof that justice can wear a suit and step onto a stage with pride. Outside the Chicago sunset burned red across the sky, and from that day on the 4 words, "Dignity is profit," began appearing in hundreds of campaigns, university lectures, and most importantly, in the renewed faith of millions. 2 weeks after the press conference, Chicago seemed reborn after a long reign. The city's billboards no longer flaunted interest rates, but instead carried a new message: dignity is profit. Across train stations, digital screens displayed images of Ava Mitchell smiling as she shook hands with customers, not as a CEO greeting subordinates, but as 2 equals meeting eye to eye. The story spread like wildfire. From the Wall Street Journal to student podcasts, everyone was talking about the Ava Mitchell phenomenon. No one could have imagined that what began as an internal scandal would become the catalyst for reform across the entire financial industry. In Los Angeles, a small bank manager told his team, "We're adopting Crescent's model. Not for PR, but because it's right." In New York, economics students debated the Mitchell effect, the idea that ethics and profit could finally coexist. In Atlanta, an African-American woman opened a bank account for the first time in 10 years. When asked why she smiled, I saw Ava's video. I wanted to believe again. As for Ava herself, she wasn't chasing the spotlight. Each morning she arrived at the office as usual, no security, no entourage. Yet the air around her was different. Employees greeted her not just out of duty, but out of genuine respect. On the 42nd floor, the CEO's office had softer lighting now. Behind her desk, the glass wall bore a bronze plaque engraved with her words from the press conference: "Justice is not a slogan. It is how we treat others when no one is watching." Downstairs, Erin Hale, now Director of Service Culture Transformation, led the first staff training session. In a small meeting room, she stood before 12 new hires, marker in hand, the whiteboard behind her displaying 3 bold words: "See, respect, react." "We can't control how customers show up," Erin said, her voice firm yet warm. "But we can control how they leave. If they leave feeling seen, we've already won." A young employee raised a hand. "Ms. Hale, what if the customer is rude or disrespectful?" Erin smiled. "Then you must be the calmer one. Respect isn't a reward. It's a standard." Heads nodded around the room. The young employees began to understand that sometimes the way you serve others defines who you are. Meanwhile, Maya Lopez, the student who had live-streamed the incident, had become an online sensation. The press called her the witness of digital age justice. Universities invited her to speak about the power of social proof. In a live interview, the host asked, "If you could go back to that moment, would you do anything differently?" Maya smiled, her eyes bright. "I'd do the exact same thing, because sometimes it only takes one person brave enough to record the truth to change an entire system." Grace Lynn, the elderly woman who spoke up that day, became the face of Crescent's senior customer program. A photo of her and Ava talking in the Loop 12 lobby appeared on the cover of Time magazine, with the headline, "The Return of Humanity in Business." At home, she often joked with her granddaughter, "I didn't do anything big, dear. I just said one sentence. This isn't right. But sometimes one right sentence is enough to make the world stop. And as for Dylan Hart, the man who started it all, he was now in a completely different place. 3 months after the incident, he was teaching at a small community college, helping immigrant students learn personal finance management. One student asked, "You used to work at a big bank. Why are you teaching here?" Dylan replied, his voice gravelly but sincere. "Because I need to relearn how to treat people from the beginning." He adjusted the chalkboard where he had written in uneven letters, "Respect is the real currency." No one knew if Ava had ever read that story, but if she had, she would have smiled. Because sometimes justice doesn't punish, it transforms. 3 months passed, and Crescent First Bank's stock didn't just recover, it rose 12%. Internal reports showed customer satisfaction climbing from 72 to 94%, discrimination complaints dropping to nearly zero, and employee engagement reaching a 10-year record high. On the morning news, the anchor read a short headline, "Crescent First Bank, from a slap to a revolution." That evening, Ava stood alone in her office, the city below bathed in light. She remembered the first day she walked into Loop 12 in a simple outfit, and the moment Dylan's hand came down, the pain was gone. Only meaning remained. She whispered softly to herself, "Justice doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to not be forgotten." Outside, the bank's sign glowed with the 4 words the world now knew by heart: "Dignity is profit." And for the first time in years, America's financial industry was no longer talking about numbers, it was talking about people. 6 months after the fateful slap that shook social media, the world had changed, not through slogans, but through the way people looked at one another. From Chicago to New York, from Dallas to Seattle, hundreds of bank branches displayed the same small plaque at their reception desks, "Dignity Banking Standard," inspired by Crescent First Bank. What was once a media movement had become a national standard. On a Monday morning, Ava Mitchell walked into the Loop 12 branch, the place where it had all begun. There were no security barriers, no curious stares. The bank lobby now glowed with warm brown tones. The chairs were positioned at eye level, with customers and employees greeted each person with genuine smiles. Maria Santos, the new branch manager, about 35 years old, approached. "Welcome back, Ms. Mitchell. We just finished our quarterly report. Customer satisfaction is at 97%, and there have been 0 discrimination complaints in 6 months. Ava nodded, her smile gentle. "Well done, Maria. I once said the place that caused the wound should be the first to heal it." Maria guided her around the lobby. An elderly man was being assisted by a young teller, speaking with kindness. A family of immigrants was being served in Spanish, and at a nearby desk sat Mrs. Grace Lynn, the woman who had spoken up that day, now signing her first savings contract with her granddaughter. Ava approached. Mrs. Lynn looked up, her smile as warm as sunlight. "You see, dear, no one asks me, 'Why are you here?' anymore. They just ask, 'How can we help you?'" Ava smiled, her eyes glistening. That's the question every place should begin with. At the same time, in a small community college classroom on the outskirts of the city, Dylan Hart stood before his students. On the board he had written, "Mistakes are only fatal if you stop learning." He told the class about the day he lost everything, and how that very moment taught him that a person's worth isn't measured by their title but by how they act when they have none. The room was silent, not from fear, but from empathy. He ended the lecture with the words, "I once lost my job to find my conscience, and I will never lose it again." In a Harvard University lecture hall, Maya Lopez stood on stage with a microphone replaying the old live stream. "That day, I was just a student with a phone," she said, "but I learned that justice doesn't need a loud microphone, just someone brave enough to speak." The audience rose in applause. In that moment, she realized justice was no longer the story of a single bank. It was the story of a generation. That evening, Ava returned to her 60-floor apartment. The city below shimmered like an inverted night sky. She brewed a cup of tea and opened her laptop to review the monthly report. More than 200 banks across the United States had registered to adopt the dignity training model. A small notification appeared in the corner of the screen. Crescent First Bank nominated for the 2024 National Award for Corporate Ethics. Ava smiled softly and closed the laptop. There was no feeling of triumph, only the quiet peace of someone who knew her work had outgrown the boundaries of a title. She looked out through the glass wall where the night wind curled around the glowing towers. And in that silence, Ava whispered to herself, "Like a prayer, justice doesn't end with a verdict. It ends with real change." 1 year later. Spring had returned to Chicago, and the sky was as clear as if it had just been washed clean. In front of the main lobby of Crescent First Bank Loop, 1,200 of people gathered for the ceremony, celebrating 1 year of the Dignity Banking Initiative. A new bronze plaque was unveiled at the entrance, its engraving deep in the stone, "Dignity Banking Initiative, where change began." Ava Mitchell stood at the podium behind her, a diverse group of employees from branches across the country. There were no flashing cameras, no media storm, only smiles and gratitude. She looked around the lobby, the very place that had once witnessed a slap that shook the world. Now everything was different. Soft lighting, low seats, and every Friday morning, customers and employees shared free coffee together. In one corner, a framed photo of Grace Lynn, shaking Ava's hand that day, hung proudly with the words, "Kindness is courage." Ava began to speak her voice, no longer that of a CEO giving a speech, but of a storyteller recalling a journey. Exactly 1 year ago, right here, I was humiliated and dismissed. But I also witnessed something stronger than power, the courage of those who dared to say, "This isn't right." She paused her gaze, drifting toward Grace Lynn's photo, then continued. Today, Crescent First Bank is more than a bank. It's a reminder that every system can change if the people within it are willing to change first. In the audience, Erin Hale and Carlos Reyes sat side by side, their eyes glistening. They remembered that day, how their careers had nearly fallen apart, only to become the beginning of something larger than themselves. Farther back among the guests stood Dylan Hart. He was no longer dressed in a suit, just a simple jacket, holding an invitation card that read, "Honoring those who helped us see clearer." Ava caught his gaze and nodded softly. There was no resentment, no judgment, only forgiveness. And in that moment, Dylan understood he didn't need to be absolved, only to learn how to stand in truth. After the ceremony, Ava stepped down from the stage and walked into the lobby. Maya Lopez approached, holding a small camera. "Mitchell," she said with a smile, "I'm filming the final scene for my documentary, The Ripple Effect, about how one right act can create change. Could you say one last line for the ending?" Ava looked into the lens, her eyes calm and bright, and smiled. "Remember this," she said, "change doesn't start with a system. It starts with one person who dares to believe they can do things differently. If you see something wrong, don't just turn away. Speak up. Because justice doesn't appear on its own. It is built one action at a time." Maya lowered her head, her voice trembling. Thank you for making us believe that decency can still be contagious. That afternoon, the spring wind swept across the new bronze plaque. Sunlight caught the 4 engraved words, "Dignity is profit." A little girl passed by, holding her mother's hand, and asked Mom, "What does dignity mean?" Her mother smiled, bending down. "It means being kind to others, even when no one tells you to." Ava heard it and smiled gently. She knew her mission was complete, not because the bank had changed, but because the way people spoke about respect had changed. She lifted her gaze toward the clear Chicago sky, the wind brushing through her hair, and whispered a message for generations to come. Dignity is not something we own, it's something we give. From the perspective of a corporate culture expert, Ava Mitchell's story is not just a journey to restore dignity, but proof that ethics and success are never at odds. When an organization puts people at its core, profit becomes a natural outcome rather than a blind pursuit. Crescent First Bank has demonstrated a simple yet powerful truth. Every crisis is a test to reveal who can still hold on to their integrity. And when compassion is placed back at the heart of a system, the entire world begins to change with it. If you believe that respect and fairness are still values worth protecting in this era, press like to help spread that message, and subscribe to join us in continuing the journey of telling real stories about courage, about those who turn adversity into light. Before you go, leave a comment that reflects your belief. Keep your dignity.